Hey everybody, how's Games for Change going? All right. Oh, you got that? All right, we're good? Okay. Cool. We don't want to keep you out here all night, so I'm going to jump right into it. Just so you know what's going on with the day here, I'm going to do a little bit of a talk, and then we're going to get into the awards. And then you can go away to dinner, and it's going to be magnificent. So what I was going to talk about today is some of the methodologies that I've used for creating transformational games and how I got there. And some of it I think is a little unusual, may surprise you. So for people who don't know about Schell Games, we've a game studio in Pittsburgh. There's about 100 of us there. About 2/3 of what we do are educational and transformational games. About 1/3 of it are entertainment games. I also teach at the Carnegie Mellon Entertainment Technology Center. I'd previously been the creative director of the Disney VR studio, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And I'm the author of the Art of Game Design, now in second edition. Yeah, okay, great. So what I wanted to, thanks very much. So I wanted to talk about the time I spent at Disney. This was really transformative time for me. I had been very much on kind of a computer science path with some entertainment background, but it wasn't really till I got to the VR studio that I really learned how to bring it all together. And it was an incredibly powerful time because the Disney Imagineering that runs the, makes all the Disney theme park magic happen is an incredible organization with like such a mix of incredibly talented people. One of the big things I'd worked on there was Disney Quest. We developed a few different attractions for Disney Quest. Anyone here been to Disney Quest down in Florida? A few people, all right. Disney's VR theme park, kind of way ahead of its time there. So 5 floors of virtual fun, as they like to put it. And one of the experiences we created was this virtual Pirates of the Caribbean. And so this was before the movie and all that came out. Our challenge was, how do you take the famous Pirates of the Caribbean ride and make it interactive? And we kind of like, wow, it's a cool challenge. We weren't quite sure what to do and how to do it. We knew we were going to use computer graphics. So here you've got your 1997 state-of-the-art real-time computer graphics happening right here. But more than that, we weren't quite sure how we were going to go about it. And one of the big things at Disney is always theming. And the idea being that you don't want to just make an experience about something. You want to figure out how can you need to figure out what is it about, and then you want to theme it about that in as many ways as possible. In this case, we decided this is going to be a world about what is it like to be a pirate. What is it, we want to make you feel what it is to be a pirate. So of course we're going to use all our fancy CG stuff, but we did a lot more than that. So if you look at the nature of the experience here, this is a kind of a cave-based experience that you climb into. It's got 4 screens going all the way around it, and they are 3D screens. They weren't 3D just to make it cool. We wanted them to be cool because we wanted that feeling of a cannonball flying right in your face. But also, we realized that the feeling of being a pirate is the feeling of being out at the ocean. And when you have 3D, your eyes relax in the distance. And you can get that same feeling of being in out at the ocean, even though you're in this tiny room. And you see all the other things that we did. We didn't, initially the plan was to use a joystick to both shoot and to steer the boat. And we realized that's not, how is a joystick themed to being a pirate? So we put these metal spun aluminum cannons in there. And we put in this wooden steering wheel. And then even little things like we needed to make sure you don't fall out of this thing, because this is actually a motion platform. So we have a rope here, but it's a rope with kind of a brass hook on it. We need a place for you to put your stuff, so we put nets. We could have put a little shelf or something, but we thought nets would be more themed. Even things like the sound people came to us and said, well, you're going to have sound. Where do you want the speakers? And we're like, oh, I don't know. I guess I don't know. And the sound guy says, well, what are you going for? We're like, we want to feel like you're a pirate. He said, so I guess shooting the cannons is important. I said, yeah, it's really important. He says, so you're going to want subwoofers. And I'm like, yeah, definitely. He said, let me tell you a thing about subwoofers. If you do them just right, if you put them in the right spot, you can make the sound wave actually collapse inside your body. So would that be something you would want? Oh my God, yes, definitely, right? And things like the lighting. We could have just put lights in here, but we get this animated lights that make it look like it's light reflecting off the water. The air conditioning people came to us. yeah, do you care where we put the vent? We're going to put the vent. Does it bother you where we're going to put it? And we're like, vent, how can we use the vent? What if we can make it be like, yeah, the ocean breeze is like, yeah, can you put it in the front so it's kind of blowing past you? And yeah, we'll put it wherever you want, I don't care. So we use that, so we try to use every little thing. So we had lots and lots of things in here as well as in the game. Even outside, this is a kind of a composite photo of the Q-Line experience. We painted this big mural on the outside of it, and we wanted people to be able to see into the inside. You can't quite make that out here, but the horizon line on the mural lines up perfectly with the horizon line that you can see in the screens when people are waiting outside. Even here, you're waiting right outside. Look at all the theming. We tried to make sure we have light fixtures. Let's get those themed. We could call them Pod 1, Pod 2, Pod 3. That's not piratey. No, we're going to name each one of them kind of a pirate-themed name. So this is Blackbeard's Ghost, one of the ships. Even the trash can, look at that trash can right there. Even that is themed up. The one piece that's not themed are those 3D glasses, these IMAX 3D glasses. We kept trying to come up with ways to theme them. We put a bandana on and it looked stupid and it got dirty and that was no good. One smart aleck on our team's like, maybe we'll just put an eye patch, then we don't have to do 3D. That wasn't going to work. So we kind of gave up on it. We're like, we can't think of anything. We'll theme everything, but we won't theme that. I don't know what to do about that. We'll just leave that. And we go down to test the thing out after it's been installed for a couple weeks just to see how it's going. And we're waiting in line, and we're watching the crew members in their themed outfits, and they're leading people up. And I notice our guy has veered away from the careful script that we wrote for him, because he comes up and he says, now, before you board your ship, you'll need to don the eyes of Bluebeard. And we're like, that's awesome, right? Because the one thing that wasn't themed, the people working on it were like, yeah, we need to fix this so that it is. And it's one of the wonderful things when you know what you're doing and when you know what you're about and you theme every little thing, everybody can help out and everybody gets it back on track. So now you get to the question of, okay, well, that's all kind of interesting, and it was an incredible education for me working on these different themed Disney projects. How does that apply to serious games? And actually, I want to say I don't like the term serious games, so I will not use that again. You'll hear me instead use a phrase I prefer, which is transformational games. I like this phrase much better because serious games makes it sound like the goal of the game is to be serious, and that if you accidentally had fun while playing the game, maybe you're doing it wrong. And that's not what we mean. That's not what we mean. When we say serious, we mean, well, we want games that are going to change people. That's why we call it games for change. So we like to use the phrase transformational games to help us remember our goal is transformation. And as for the Schell Games transformational game design process, we have this process that we use that has a lot of steps and a lot of things. I don't want to get into all of that today. I want to focus on two parts of that, which are about the transformational goals. A big part of our process is to figure out what is the change that we want to instill in the player. Sometimes that's an educational change, sometimes it's a perspective change, sometimes it's a change of habits. There's a lot of changes we might want to instill, but there's always some kind of change. That's what's different about these kind of games. So that's a really important notion. And then once we know the change we want to instill, well, what are the ways we're going to bring about that change? And one of the things that I quickly realized was that I could use this same process of theming from all directions to approaching transformational goals. So as an example, I want to talk about a game we've been working on for quite some time. This is the biggest project I've ever worked on. We've had, just at our shop alone, 50 people working on the world of Lexica for 3 years, and we're not the only ones working on it. There are 10 other game studios involved, as well as a huge team over at Amplify Learning. So I'm gonna talk a bit about that today. So just talking about Lexica, the transformation that it's all about, it's focusing on the problem, because you're doing these transformations in order to solve a problem. The problem is many kids start opting out of reading when they get to middle school. Most kids in elementary school are engaged with reading to some extent, but a lot of kids when they get to middle school, things kind of get away from them. Maybe they were a little behind in reading, and their vocabulary and their grammar is not quite there. Maybe they feel like none of their friends do any reading. Maybe they've never found a book they really personally connect with, and they drift away from reading. So the goal here is how can we get them to become lifelong readers? And it's easy to, your brain jumps to all kinds of solutions, but the way we approached it was we said, okay, if that's the problem, that students are drifting away from reading and they're opting out of reading, how can we change that? So we looked into the research on why that happens, and we learned there are many barriers that keep kids from reading. And so we came up with 9 different methods in our game in order to help change their reading habits and beliefs and goals and how they feel about reading. So we'll go through these, but first what I want to do is just show you a little bit of a trailer of Lexica to give you a sense of what it is and what it's about. So I'll roll this video here.
Welcome to the world of Lexica. A place where your curiosity is free to explore a world brimming with stories and create new ones of your own. Here, characters emerge from their text to help you start on the adventure. You see, in Lexica, books are alive, and now they need your help. You will meet some who want to see creativity controlled, and some who would see it destroyed. But neither can happen as long as your creative powers shine through. Here is where your own story begins. Explore the world of Lexica, dedicated to literature and lore throughout history. Watch as the world unfolds into a realm limited only by human imagination. Engage with characters to help you on your quests, and watch out for the dark voids that will try and stand in your way. Will you be the one to save Lexica from a looming threat? What is the mysterious force that is destroying this beautiful world? Encounter a variety of minigames to challenge you along the way. Which will you master? Grow and change as you explore the rich world around you. What will you choose to become? Build worlds to share your own stories with others. What will you create? Gather up your friends and new allies, spread across worlds of narrative adventures to become the hero of your tale. Only your curiosity and creativity can bring to life the world of Lexica.
Okay, so you get some sense of that. All right, thank you. So to be clear, this is a game designed for tablets. Initially, we're launching on iPads with it, and it's currently in beta in a number of schools and is going to be going into kind of a full launch in schools this coming September. So, talking about our different transformational methods, so just kind of going through them one at a time. The first one we took on was this notion of mindset theory. I'm sure some people here are familiar with it. For people who are not, there's a researcher named Carol Dweck who made a very interesting discovery about human nature, about how your perception, your beliefs about the nature of intelligence do a great deal to influence your motivations in terms of the tasks that you take on. So her initial study was about having kids take a test, and they would get a chance to take a difficult test. And they would take this test, and one group had an instructor who would say, you know, wow, you really worked hard on this. And the other group had an instructor who at the end would say, wow, you must be really smart to work on this test. Anyway, and then they would be given an option to take a second test. And it was amazing. There was very visible results. The students who were praised for their hard work were willing to take the second test. The students who were praised for being smart were often not willing to take the second test. And fundamentally what it comes down to is if you believe intelligence can change and is a muscle that you can develop and grow, then it makes you want to take on new challenges because you'll get better. But if you believe that intelligence is something you're born with and that it's fixed, if you encounter something hard, you feel like I would be an idiot to keep doing this because I'm not going to get any better. And so we make the entire story of Lexica about this concept. It is a war between two internal factions at this library, one who believes that intelligence is fixed and one who believes that your mind can grow. And so the entire story is engaged in that, and the idea is to get people thinking about, well, how do they really come down, and what are the consequences of this? The second one is we wanted to immerse them in the world of literature. There's some of the research indicates that the world of books and literature can often seem quite alien. And so the idea was we wanted to introduce students to characters from literature. Some of these characters are from classic literature, and some of them are from more modern books. Initially, in our first go-round, while we hadn't got all the sort of approvals from publishers, the early stuff is all very much kind of about classic literature. Characters like Maid Marian and Dr. Jekyll and Frankenstein and John Henry are all part of the story. But lately, we've been getting more and more approvals to use more modern characters. So here's some examples of some of the characters here. Here's Emma from the Jane Austen book, is one of the companions you have in the game. Cadence is one of the librarians. Frankenstein's monster, who we chose to portray as in the books, not in the familiar conception of him in the movies. Anyway, we have dozens of these characters who, like in a traditional RPG, are your companions. So characters from literature are your companions as you move through the story, and of course they have powers that sort of match their sort of backgrounds and abilities. Another important one is the nature of vocabulary and syntax and reading fluency. Many junior high students get to the point where they want to read. Maybe they're excited about reading Harry Potter, but then they get into it and the vocabulary is too tough and they can't quite make it, and that makes them shy away. So every game, every RPG has different things where you need to kind of practice and repeat things, the sort of some level of combat grind, as it were. We replace a lot of this with games that, these are many mini games created by many different studios that are each designed to address a different challenge that students need to overcome. Here's as an example. So we have ones about vocabulary, we have ones about spelling. Here's one about morphology, because there's research that shows the ability to break words into pieces and reassemble them into new words goes a tremendously long way towards reading fluency and understanding. So here's an example from Inkblot, one of our games.
A strange and sinister corruption tarnishes these once wondrous caverns. Help the brave little inkling Blot cleanse the tunnels below. Dig through the dirt to uncover word parts. Use your wits to solve tricky word puzzles. Clear the caves of the corruption. Plan Blot's path carefully. Use your word knowledge to get right to the root of the problem. Puzzling pitfalls and cryptic caves will test the limits of your vocabulary.
So in every case, we've tried very hard to make the games beautiful. We've tried to make them action-oriented, but also involve sort of the key skills and tasks that students need to develop. Another important thing is this is a game about reading, and so it's an RPG, and we had the question, well, do we want to do voiceover? And we said, boy, voiceover is expensive, and it's not reading. This is a game about reading. So the story in this is deep and elaborate. We have, oh my gosh, I'm not even sure the number of writers. There's somewhere between 8 and 10 writers who worked full-time on this for years. It's an incredibly deep collection of sort of branching narratives, and this happens over a 3-year period. The goal is for students to play this through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with a series of unlocking episodes that happen over their 3 years in junior high, and the dialogue is intentionally written to be at the right level and have the appropriate vocabulary words for the right years. Another important one is the notion of gateway books. It's very important in developing a relationship with reading to develop a relationship with a book that really means something to you. So throughout, as you are solving problems and puzzles in this big quest-based world, you run into books and characters who talk about books, and the game is integrated with an e-reader. There's an e-reader right on the same tablet that you're using that has hundreds of books in it. The initial beta has 300, and we're moving up toward, I think we're moving towards probably 1,000 books that will all be in there, integrated in, so that at any moment when you see a book that's interesting while you're playing, you can just pop over and start engaging in the reading of that book. And we have different characters make suggestions about different books. And the characters are aware of what you've been reading and what you've been interested in, and so they try and make suggestions about different books. One we often talk about, Maid Marian, is a character in the game, and she's very active in the game. She's an archer, and the Hunger Games is one of her favorite books, so she can talk about that. Okay, so lead them to gateway books is really important. Here's an example of Traben talking about Peter Pan, which for 6th graders is a pretty good gateway book. So one of the things that happens is items from the books sometimes pop out and enter the world of Lexica. And so this is Captain Hook's pirate ship popping up right there. So one more is time to read. Reading takes time, and students nowadays are busier than ever. They have not only more planned activities, but more available distractions than ever, which makes it difficult for them to read. So I don't know any other way to put this. We're trying to create situations where we're stealing their video game time and turning it into reading time. And that's partly by integrating the reading into the games so that when they want to, they can think, hey, I'm in here, maybe I will read a book while I'm in here. But then part of it is our unique system of delivering the content. This thing has 30 big quest-oriented chapter episodes, and we don't just dump you, here's all 30, grind through them as fast as you can. They're released over time, over 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Almost like, you can think of it like television episodes coming out on a regular schedule. If you fall behind a few months, later you can binge play and then catch up. But this keeps everybody in your school on the same level so that when something new happens, it's something worth talking about. And part of why this was important to us is that students who played way ahead, we wanted them to kind of run out of stuff to do right now so that they could, so that they're like, well, I got to wait on this next gameplay. I haven't counted all these books. Maybe I'll check them out. So the game itself tries to make time to read. Incentivizing reading is something else. This is an incredibly controversial topic. The question of should you give incentives for reading. This is a highly controversial topic, and so we've dealt with it somewhat gingerly. We didn't want to have huge incentives for it. For example, there's the famous Pizza Hut Book It program that some people think is great and other people look at kind of with a very fishy eye. There was one critic who said, yeah, Pizza Hut coupons for reading books at school, based on what we know about motivation and motivation theory, it depends on your goal. If your goal is to make fat children who hate reading, this is an excellent plan, right? Certainly, it would be very bad if we had an incentive system that ended up backfiring and causing students to not like reading. So we take a very gentle touch. The e-reader has integrated into it optional questions that students can answer on the side. They can totally ignore that if they want. They don't have to have the question window open. But if they do choose to answer these comprehension questions, then the points stack up, and it doesn't give you progress in the game, but what it does is it gives you vanity items so that you can use to dress up your character, and a lot of students are really into that, and so that there's some motivation for some students there. Another important one is reading is a private activity. Many students often don't see their classmates read and assume that they don't read, when in truth, most junior high students are doing some level of reading. And so there's a system in place so that you're able to see what books your classmates have been reading. And we have this map that sort of shows the locations of the different books in the world. Another one is, and this is I guess the last one I'll talk about, is the joy of writing. There is research that shows that students who learn to enjoy writing end up becoming lifelong readers. Now, this is sort of challenging. How do you get a student to get engaged in writing? One thing we realized is that kids love making things. Sitting down and writing an essay or a story can be a little intimidating, but the idea of creating their own interactive, branching RPG story is something many of them have wanted to do and never had an outlet to do it. So we've created a system that lets them do it. I'll show a little bit of a clip of it here. You can see some of it here. This is sort of just, you can see it's a fairly straightforward system for creating branching, sort of choose your own adventure type narrative. Here, someone's putting in the results for what happens when you drink the bubbling brew, and you get choices about will I drink it or not drink it, and you get to give answers for that. But it's not just a pure choose-your-own adventure, because this all happens within the context of a 3D world that the students create. They create characters, and they put them in, and they can advance state in the game. And then once they finish one of these, they're able to share it with all of their classmates. And one of the reward systems we use in the game is that gradually, the more progress you make, you'll unlock different items that you can use in the story worlds that you create in the system. So there you go. There's our 9 methods. So, and I guess I just wanted to talk about this a little bit because it occurred to me that not everyone I talk to and know thinks about the world this way. Because one of the things I really like about using multiple simultaneous parallel methods of transformation is you never know which ones are really going to work and which ones don't. You have hopes and you have plans and you have research to kind of back some of it up, but some are going to be more experimental and less experimental. And if you try many, many, many at once, some will work with some students and some players, some will work with others. But if you try many and some of them don't work, at least you'll have some that are working. So I guess what I leave you with here is if you are taking on a transformational game of some kind, you should ask yourself these 3 questions. First, most importantly, what problem am I solving? If you don't know this, then you're just kind of wandering around in the dark. You should know this. Everyone on the team should be on the same page about this is the problem that we are solving. And now, what are the many ways this problem can be addressed? And you want to come up with as many as possible. And then you want to decide, okay, based on the many we've come up with, what subset of these can we pick that will be a harmonious solution that will make a great game and attack the problem from as many directions as possible? Thanks very much.